Rachmaninoff's Vocalise, Opus 34, number 14, has always been a very popular piece of his, and it exists in many transcriptions for various solo instruments with piano and also for piano solo. In this lesson, we'll look at the original version for voice and piano to see what exactly makes it so rich and expressive. Then the next lesson in my applied orchestration course, I'll discuss one very masterful transcription of it for solo piano as well. The Vocalise is in C# minor and it lasts about 6 minutes. It has two main sections, each repeated, and then a coda after that. Before going on, please listen to one of the many recordings of the Vocalise on YouTube. The score is available on IMSLP as well. The overall melancholy character of the piece is the result, first, of its slow tempo, combined with chromatic harmony in a minor key, and also of the pulsing heartbeat accompaniment. This kind of pulsation could have been boring in the hands of a lesser composer, but the harmony here is exceedingly rich and always varied, with many seventh chords and linear chords, always maintaining tension. The texture often also includes little touches of counterpoint that serve to elevate it above the level of a simple background accompaniment. The piano thus becomes, in every way, an equal participant to the voice. The dialogue between them is never routine. Let's look at the first section. From measure 1 to 5, the vocal line gradually descends from E to G sharp, ornamenting each step of the way with neighbor notes and passing tones. It moves entirely in small intervals, supported by a conjunct descending bass line. Note how, right at the bottom of the vocal descent, at the end of measure 4, the bass line becomes chromatic for the first time, underlining the arrival of the low G sharp as a special moment. Right after that, in measure 6, we have a quick rise in the vocal line to a peak on the high G sharp, along with the first leaps in the bass line. Remember, a quick change of register like this in the voice is much more significant than it would be, say, in the piano. The quick melodic rise here is a perfect example of a contrast effect. Following 5 bars of melancholy descent, the rise and the richer texture emerge like a sudden light in the dark. The music seems to be modulating to E major at the end of measure 5, but the expected arrival is deceptive, arriving on a C# minor chord instead, which then proceeds to a stronger, perfect authentic cadence in C# minor at the start of measure 7. Note the Neapolitan harmony in measure 6, which makes the cadence more intense, standing out as a special moment. Once again, this is an important basic principle of musical punctuation. Make it special. The pulsating accompaniment doesn't stop at the perfect authentic cadence. Not only does it keep moving, but the piano now includes a variant of the opening vocal motive in 16th notes. The vocal line, on the other hand, is now simpler in rhythm. When the vocal line does get more active in measure 9, the counterpoint in the piano inner parts continues, creating a sense of dialogue between voice and piano. Again, Rachmaninoff is thinking of this as chamber music, not simply as voice with piano in the background. After the voice reaches the peak of the phrase in measure 11, second beat, the harmonic rhythm speeds up. This is emphasized by the added octaves in the bass, starting in measure 12. When writing for piano, Rachmaninoff always orchestrates the dynamics. These octaves add the lowest register, not so far heard in the piece. All these changes work together to make this passage richer and more intense. The bass resumed its stepwise descent in measure 11 and 12, and as before, leaps only arrive at the cadence in measure 17-18. The octave leap in measure 16 in the bass doesn't affect the harmony. Notice also how in measure 16-17 the harmonic rhythm speeds up to 8th notes, creating punctuation to end the section. The cadence here, in measure 18, is on the dominant, G minor. This of course tells the listener that the piece is not complete. In the first ending, the piano rises and the texture is a bit thicker, setting off this bar from what came before, marking it as an important turning point in the form. The second ending here is quite different, preparing the way for a new section. After the repetition of the first section, we start the second main section of the piece in measure 19. As before, the vocal line moves by small intervals in a limited register until at the end of measure 22 it moves up quickly from G sharp to F sharp. What follows is a sequence. Measure 24 is like measure 20, measure 25 is like 21, and so on, with a bit of rhythmic embellishment added in the voice. At the end of measure 26, the rising figure recurs, now starting on A. But what follows this time is more dramatic. Since we've now heard this rising idea several times, the leaps in measure 27 serve to make the vocal part much more intense, rising to an important climax. Then the voice slowly descends to middle C, the lowest note in the whole piece in the vocal part. As for the piano, the contrapuntal texture continues, but now it's orchestrated more richly. The 16th note motive is doubled in octaves between the two hands. The pulsation continues all the time. The bass maintains the low register that was opening up in the first section. Notice that the bass line, after first moving more quickly in measure 21-22, settles down on a low C-sharp pedal during measure 23-25. This makes the change of harmonic rhythm in measure 26 more noticeable. Then the bass rises chromatically in measure 27 and 28. The right hand of the piano is here in the bass clef, making the accompaniment thicker. All this serves to strongly support the climax in measure 27 and 28. As the vocal line descends in measure 29 to 32, the piano texture becomes simpler, reducing to just chords in measure 31. The combination of the vocal descent and the piano slowing down gives this cadence a welcome feeling of relaxation, of breathing. The climax here has been more intense than the first section, and so is the descent. In the last section of the piece, starting in measure 33, the piano recapitulates the vocal line from measure 1 to 7 with the original bass line, creating a kind of echo of the opening section. But now the voice adds counterpoint, first in its lower register between the hands of the piano, then as the piano rises to its climax in measure 37, crossing over it to reach its own peak on the high C sharp, creating a surge of motion before the end. The final cadence arrives in measure 38-39, first as a deceptive progression, 5 to 6, and then gradually descends into a final 5-1 in measure 40-41. This is a beautiful, gradual ending. It perfectly fits the character of the piece. An abrupt stop would have changed the mood inappropriately. The Rachmaninoff Vocalise is a wonderful example of a composer using familiar tools combined in a very personal way. It's a triumph of craftsmanship and expressivity, and the latter is very much a result of the former. As I've already mentioned in previous lessons, in music, when something happens is just as important as what is happening. A real composer knows how to make the various dimensions of the music interact in ways that intensify or mitigate each other according to where we are in the form. Well done, this can result in great expressive force.